The scene opens with a blurred spiraling of shadow and chaos, muffled moans of ecstasy and cries of pain bouncing here and there in a sea of dark, impenetrable substance. We see in the distance a speck moving. Faintly and obscurely, we see a man thrashing amidst the endless darkness. As what appears to be smoke comes off of his hurtling form, dashing away at great speed, and finally an end to the darkness. A small doorway of dim yellow light. The tiny figure is thrown through the portal out of this infinite black expanse, and we see the form of Tito Vega roll out on the other side. Emerging on a rough stone floor, smoke coming off his broken body. The entire right side is charred, almost completely broken away, and the body threatening to tear apart as it smolders and crackles with lingering fire. Nearby, we become aware of cries of strife. A woman comes into view, wearing white robes and sandals, fair-skinned and long blonde hair. She is held at each arm by two men being dragged by these two men toward the smoldering remains of Tito Vega, as she sobs and fights. "No, please, I have served for so long. I will continue to serve, please."
"Enough. This is a great honor, and you should be on your knees thanking their majesty for this privilege."
The woman is thrown down in front of you, Tito, the right half decaying and mostly down to ash, down to dust. At this point, you feel this as you're coming to, having been traveling through some nightmarish conduit of unknown origin and alien matter. You emerge now to see the blonde woman thrown before you. Your wounds are severe and excruciating. You don't feel the right half of your body except the phantom pain. How are you reacting, and what do you do?
Tito's confused. He doesn't know what's going on. The pain is too intense in his mind. But he does feel one thing, the hunger within.
I will note, actually, something's very different about that tonight. Since this encounter, since Malak invaded you, the beast in you has quieted to a standstill you've not known since your embrace. It's an eerie domination or submission of this beast in you. It's still there, you're distantly aware of it, but even as you are nearly on starvation, it's not nearly as dangerous as it once was.
Tito is even more confused, for he feels the emptiness within, but the hunger that usually gnaws at him is not there.
And as you're seeing this, as you're seeing the woman, and you're realizing this about yourself, this void, this quietness in you, almost immediately your head arcs up, craning your spine unnaturally and your mouth agape beyond your control. A torrent of black matter and purple flame expels out of you and flies into the mouth of the blonde-haired woman, who screams and shrieks, but it's muffled, it's stifled, as she becomes paralyzed by pain and suffocation from this roiling cloud of darkness that assaults her. And as the last of it leaves you and enters her, in little more than a very violent few seconds, you see the woman slouch forward, propping herself up on her forearms. And you no longer feel the burning, overwhelming presence that was suffocating you and controlling you, nor the surging confidence or the deluge of power that ran through you. Though the wounds remain, you feel you have the wherewithal enough to at least speak again.
Where am I?
The two guards, the two men, look at you with a mixture of confusion and fear. They don't immediately speak to you, and beyond them you see there are more people starting to gather. Though it's a bit hazy, it's a bit difficult to focus on them right now. The woman ahead of you, if she still remains just a woman, rises to look down at herself, flexing her fingers and running her hands down the side of her robed body. There are still tears drying on her face, but the expression is now cold and flat.
I thought Isabel was stronger than this. This will not last long.
The blonde speaks, looking down at herself, before turning to the two men who brought her, looking only at you for a moment. She turns to the men who have now fallen to one knee and look down. They seem to be soldiers of some kind. They're armed and chained, look similar to city guards, but they wear these hoods with cloth that conceals their faces.
I demand more cattle be brought from my personal collection, return to the parishes, and find me 10 more.
One of these men speaks up, still kneeled, still looking down.
Majesty, we have scoured Dacorum, Hertsmere, Watford, and Welwyn, Hatfield parishes. The Hertfordshire county is thin with what remains. If we take any more, the parishes will...
The man is interrupted as the blonde takes him by the throat, hand at the neck, rising him up above her and choking the life out of him. The other guard does not react, except for a slight tremble.
Did I ask for your opinion on the parishes?
And she throws the man back down as he coughs, gasping for air and muttering out some sobbed apology as he reaches for his neck. Still, no one seems to have taken much notice of you, and this woman seems to have ignored your question. She continues to speak, looking away from you.
Search farther, do what you must. For penance of wasting my time, you will bring me 2 full.
How is Tito reacting to this as she commands these men to leave, apparently in search of cattle, and then turning back to you?
Tito is in too much agony to really do much of anything. He's just taking in the situation. He suspects he'll be alerted to what's going on when someone is willing to talk.
You can see a bit better now that you're looking up, getting your bearings. A small crowd is gathering around. Looks like workers and laborers. Dirty, weak, near-starved, in rags and tatters. The faces looking on are pale and gaunt, eyes wide with fear and wonder. Some of them look little more than skin and bones. They appear the walking dead. This blonde woman, smiling at you faintly, turns back to the crowd, addressing them beside you.
Behold my flock, for tonight I return to you with great rejoice. Tonight I reveal to you my 3rd apostle. Let it be known that as I punish weakness, cowardice, and disloyalty, I reward the strong, the eager, and the loyal with my bounty and blessing. I now take the form you all once recognized as Isabel, and you may now behold for yourselves the honor she has received for bearing my avatar and earning herself eternal bliss and ascendancy through me, an honor you too may one day receive.
And finally, she turns to prop you up with one arm. It seems to be fairly easy for this woman to do, even despite your broken, smoldering body. And holding you up and looking out.
Witness now my grace and compassion, for this truest hero and most loyal of servants has been wounded in my name and now will be healed through my divinity. And the crowd of wretches and supplicants looks on with awed whisper as a violet glow captures you, and before your eyes you feel your wounds undone. You see naked limbs emerging from the ripped, broken, and burned cloth. Where once there was only charred edge, your body is reforming. You have healed 5 aggravated, and now only superficial burns remain. How is Tito reacting to all of this?
Tito's felt something similar to this with Kawiya, but this is much different feeling. He's has a sense of dread about him.
Does he make any noticeable reaction on the outside, or does he remain quiet?
Tito's face is like stone at the moment.
You see now the crowd of onlookers, which has gathered to something like a few dozen. They're gasping and calling out praise and prayer for Malaka Mashit. Some fall to their knees, weeping, taking their hats off. And beside you, you feel another divine pulse. It's a familiar feeling to you now. Standing as this woman, you see Malak step forward, and wings of translucent and flowing violet and black flame and bends of light emerge from behind her. This energy seems to radiate from her, and it is almost impossible to look away or not feel subdued.
Oh, praise be to Malak. Thank you, thank you.
The wretches all bow down to the ground like a sea of fanatics. A cacophony of thanks be and blessed be and other words of gratitude and subservience emerge. All while this woman, Malak, smiles and looks upon them. And she turns her smile to you.
Tito returns the smile. Half forced, half genuinely pleased at not being in such agony anymore.
Her gaze lingers on you for some time before turning back to this crowd of wretches. And the light dissipates after a few moments. Malak returns to her human form. Go now, do holy work in my name, and rejoice at your newest apostle. And the crowd begins to break apart in a new rush of energy, eager to return to work. And you see, finally, these seen around you as they begin to move towards stone switchbacks. It looks like something of a mine or something like that. There's a vast chamber, and you don't know quite how tall this goes, but the ceiling seems very far away. Maybe a quarry or some kind of mine or cavern. You see that there are switchbacks going up and down with miners and filling with dozens of laborers, people moving stones in these wheelbarrows, and some moving glinting metal, perhaps even silver. And somewhere beyond you see something like a carving or a statue. It looks very large, but you can't quite make all of it out yet.
Well, Tito's curious as to his surroundings more, considering it's very dark. He'll close his eyes and once again form the black orbs that are as deep as the abyss.
And as you do, you get a better look in this dimly lit cavern. Looking ahead, you can see the statue a bit better. It's more like a stone effigy carved into a wall of stone, but it glitters and reflects here and there, as though silver is embedded into it. And upon adjusting your vision, it's clearly an incomplete carving of a humanoid, which towers 2 stories in size at least. And yet it does appear you are underground. You must be deep somewhere. The hands of this engraved statue are out in a welcoming and inviting gesture. But upon the faceless head at the top, there is a long trail of dark crimson that has spilled down from the crown of the head and ending in a small dark pool of liquid. But you're only given a few moments to examine this before you realize that Malak is approaching you, still appearing as this blonde woman in this white robe.
Tito turns to address Locke. He offers a bow.
She smiles faintly at that. Kneel.
And Tito complies, grudgingly to himself, but he makes no overt signs of his inner thoughts.
You are now my 3rd apostle, Tito Vega. You serve me before all others. Your existence is to fulfill my whims and desires. If I imagine you to conspire against me or act against my interests, I will erase you from this world, and you will know what it is to truly suffer, as I once suffered. Do you understand?
Yes.
Arise, Apostle.
Tito stands.
I see all, I know all. I feel your deepest desires and faintest dreams now. Treachery against me will bring you only your own devastation. Serve me faithfully, and I will spare you my wrath. Serve me superbly, and you may even find reward.
Tito's first thought is, does she really have, really have that much ability to know his thoughts? But he just nods at the mention of reward.
Indeed, it's a grand claim, and certainly you've seen this thing is capable of a great deal. Whether or not omniscience or supernatural insight is among those powers, you can't say for sure. But she seems not to explain herself anymore, and begins to turn, walking away. Come, Apostle. You are very hungry, and so am I.
Tito reluctantly brings a foot forward to take a step, and gradually goes in the direction that he is commanded to.
And as you follow the young blonde holding this fallen creature within, what all is going through Tito's mind right now?
Tito's realizes that he's put himself into bondage. He is wondering how long, if an eternity, this will have to last.
How does he feel about this deal he's made now?
He's not pleased with it. Clearly this creature is extremely powerful, but he is not happy with being a slave.
And as you follow Malak further into this place, the scene begins to fade as we focus in away from Tito on the faceless visage of the large stone statue being carved and mined away at, the long, messy crimson streak running down the front face as chipping and clanking sounds of picks on stone and wheelbarrows moving begins to fade away. Now, we will officially be entering the Blue Book phase of this epilogue. We're going to cover larger periods of time as overviews and see the immediate aftermath of some of these events for everyone and the choices that have been made. Turning back to Simon and Michael, I'll first ask, is there anything either of you would have left out of your reports when questioned and interrogated more thoroughly apart from one another, or is it all told front to back?
I know that Simon would leave out the fact that he was going to take the Jamisi's offer. That's good for Tristan's ears, but no one else's.
The only thing Michael would have kind of glassed over would have been confirming that whatever took Tito was indeed a demon. He's not that well versed and didn't really see it that at all, so he's not going to try and confirm or deny it. More precisely, I don't know what the fuck it was took him. I was busy clearing the pestilence from the other room.
Alright. So Simon leaving out the part that he was contemplating accepting it, and Michael not giving a non-committal answer on the nature of the creature. So this next part, I'm going to do a lot of talking at you, describing what unfolds, but I want you guys to interrupt me at any time if you feel like your character definitely would or would not aid or interfere with any of this, and we'll dig into it at that point. And I'll try to provide a few pauses for people to speak up. Are there any questions before we get started?
Sounds clear to me.
Yep, good.
Okay. In the nights following the attack on the underground lab, a search is done on Marco Vespucci's manor, and a passageway leading to the same burnt ruins is found. In the bowels of this scorched lab, the remains of nightmarish constructs are found incomplete and reduced mostly to molten piles of flesh and blood and bile, bones stitched together in unsettling forms. But quick action by Genevieve Silvers, expending more resources among the kind, quiets this. It keeps the mortals from knowing the true depths of depravity found here. She is quickly elevated to Primogen in the coming months with overwhelming support by the sheepish Ventru, whom return heads bowed in shame after previously supporting Marco Vespucci. The bones and fangs of multiple Cainites are found in the ruin, including Bella's child, Tristan de Coisille, the real Avery Thorne, the real Marco Vespucci. It's later revealed that, by the Nosferatu, that Gage's remains were found elsewhere in the waterways, though it's unclear exactly how they confirmed that, and the nature of his demise remains vague. It's also noted through murmurs in Elysium that many a London Cainite admitted to ominous black marks just beginning to appear on their skin in those nights preceding the assault, only to notice the marks vanish almost immediately, right around the time the fire erupted. Allegedly, Bella Matea herself quit Elysium for the night due to black blemishes on her perfect visage. She returned shortly after the Inferno with a clear face and contested all such rumors. Court is called by the prince to address the incident. A large collection of evidence is compounded by the sheriff and his hounds, along with testimony and documents brought by Tito's sire. All of this paints a grand and grim plan by the impostor Marco Vespucci to replace the prince with a triumvirate oligarchy, a group of elders led by himself, Eleanor Gray, and Cole Masters. Further pieces of the puzzle are brought forward by the prodigal Nosferatu Vernon Wake, whom has since returned, which reveal the destruction of Elysium was likely an attempt by the impostor to manipulate hysteric mob frenzy and religious fear to silence the elder Malkavian Simon, silence his warnings and visions, and perhaps put an end to all those that might take up his cause. The two elders, Gray and Cole, turn on each other as this comes to light. Both bargain with the prince. Through many favors called in, as well as her betrayal of Cole's withheld vitae samples, and by elaborating on the plot for a coup to overthrow the prince, spearheaded by the impostor, Eleanor Gray narrowly manages to talk her way out of meeting the sun, and is instead stripped of all title, station, and property. She is exiled from the entirety of the British Isles under pain of blood hunt, should she return. Eleanor makes a quick exit from London and returns to Paris, where it said she was met with open arms by the Prince of Paris, Antigone, who was delighted that Eleanor had a hand in so much strife in London, whether she meant it or not. Cole is not so lucky. Lacking the social capital or political prowess of the cagey Toreador, he is sentenced to death, and is dragged to the oubliette higher up in the tower, screaming the entire way. The remaining Tremere are likewise abruptly banished from London, though not Britain, and their chantry at the Guild of Apothecaries is demolished. Curiously, on the search, only a few mundane articles and papers were found in the Guild of Apothecary, seemingly devoid of anything occult or useful, suggesting it might have been a front the entire time, leaving the true chantry still hidden somewhere in the city. As for the remaining protagonists, Michael McGavin is given singular honor by the prince, venerating him as a hero of London for being the one to strike the destructive blow against the impostor, in addition to raising the nexus of the plague's origin. For his particular responsibility and role, Michael gains a dot of status, and much of the city lauds him with praise for his decisive action that night. With encouragement by the Nosferatu primogen, the prince recognizes Simon's service and risk taken for the city as enough penance for his past transgression against the court, and informally lifts the status of social pariah hanging over him. This sentiment would later be paralleled by the Harpies, and much of the city would then follow suit. Lastly, each of you, Taziana included, are given a major boon by the prince for your part played in the investigation of the Elysium attacks and preventing the vampiric plague from consuming London. What requests do you each make of the prince? We'll start with Michael. Unless he's not here.
I'm here. I'm pondering.
Okay.
I was not expecting a major boom, so I had not thought this out.
And since you didn't think it out, since you didn't have time to think it out, you didn't know it was coming, you can kind of mentally bounce ideas and ask me if you think something would be more than or less than a major boon.
Well, I know basically what is kind of encompassed under that.
It's kind of loose.
Right. What property is now abandoned by Eleanor Gray?
Much. A great deal of property has been confiscated and taken by the prince since her eviction. She owned a great deal of property within the walls of London.
What about specific business interests she had control over?
She had a great deal of property along the waterfront, so a lot of docks, a lot of bars and brothels and inns, and not a small number of artists and crafts shops along some of the more merchant-oriented quarters and streets of the city. She was very wealthy and had a lot of land and power. Much of the Toreador did, but mostly her.
So Michael would request, we'll put this in character. If it please the court, in payment for this major boon, though I'd dearly like to propose it, it seems I'm in a position to better the life of a younger generation. So, I would accept a reasonable portion of the Lady Grey's waterfront domain and business interests to be transferred to me.
Granted. You hear the prince kind of, not bored, but very casually and easily kind of gesture towards you, nodding. You find that you are given, for a neonate, an impressive amount of domain within London, and much of it very lucrative. The waterfront is a very busy part of town. It gets much traffic from the nearby ports and people coming through. And so you do pick up a few businesses in this, a few blocks that you're given, as well as a number of these tenement buildings, which of course pay off rent. And Taziana ends up asking for her manse, which she requests not too far from your own domain, also in Toreador, previously Toreador property. She ends up getting a very fine estate, something of a previous noble manor that's fully furnished with this nice garden courtyard and elegant foyer, great hall. She seems to have finally gotten the manse that she was looking for, though she still requests you come join her, as she often... it's a large estate to have for one person.
Well, he does now have the resources to help her maintain it. Speaking of which, since the tenement buildings and the inns and the whorehouses and whatnot do pay out, what does that translate to in domain dots and resources dots, out of curiosity?
I would say you gain, in size of domain, I would say you gain 3 dots of domain and 4 dots of resources. Were there any more questions on that?
No, that's perfectly sufficient. He'll haven with Taziana
All right,
and maintain domain as appropriate.
perfect. What does Simon request when it comes to his turn?
Simon doesn't know exactly how much he can request with a major boon, but here's what he wants. He wants the right to choose progeny from London. And he wants a letter of introduction to the Prince of York, where he intends to go next.
When you ask for the right of progeny, you're granted it pretty easily. When you ask for a letter of introduction to the Prince of York, you don't get a look of concern from Prince Ambrose. He has something of a statuesque face, but you do notice a pause, and he exchanges glances with the Chamberlain Oliver, briefly, and he asks you why. Why York, particularly?
And he will tell them that it was Sharptooth's favorite city, and that the Nosferatu population there is booming.
Is that Simon's genuine reason, out of curiosity?
Yes, basically it is.
Okay.
He doesn't feel like there's anything left for him in London. He's burned too many bridges.
He tells you he will write the letter, but in all honesty, he does not know how much good it will do you going to York.
Simon doesn't want to push it by asking why, but he will nod his assent and thank the prince.
All right. In due time, you are later provided with the letter, sealed, wax, and including the insignia of the prince. Going on to other events following the end of court. Without Eleanor directing them, the Toreador, over the next few months, quickly give up Muriel Rodan in desperate hopes of mitigating the social fallout of associating with Eleanor, but never succeed in locating her sire, Edmund Fontaine. Muriel is detained by the sheriff peacefully. She does not resist. But it's realized quickly that between her truly crippling hysteria and a forbidding blood oath, it will be years before she is fully able to say anything very useful about her sire. And so she is staked and thrown into a deep cell unceremoniously deep in the Tower of London. It's also uncovered that the Chamberlain, Robin Oliver, had a hand in the most recent nights of treachery leading up to that attack, and apparently had been bribing a retainer at the Blackfriar Priory to give him frequent updates on Tito Vega's movements and relaying them to the imposter. Notes found in Marco Vespucci's manor suggest The most recent activity might have even been the very night of the assault on the lab. Of course, lacking elder status, and with his allies turning on each other, Robin fails to come up with enough political power to save himself, and is destroyed in the same oubliette as Cole Masters. This opens the vacuum for the position of Chamberlain to the Prince for a short time. Following the exile of Eleanor and the execution of Cole Masters and her estranged child Robin Oliver, the La Sombre elder Juliet quits London with nothing keeping her there. Abandoning the Blackfriar Priory to its fate, she is said to have left for Sicily. And with the loss of Tito Vega, this leaves the La Sombra Ellen Alice as the only remaining keeper in London. Eventually, Isaac Lavelle seeks the position of Chamberlain and claims innocence and ignorance of the entire affair with Marco Vespucci or the failed triumvirate coup. Largely unchallenged by anyone of significant standing, and with otherwise good pedigree, he is reluctantly accepted with lukewarm enthusiasm by the court, but bearing the heavy weight of Eleanor's shadow cast over him. The Toreador, with few remaining aged Cainites to direct them, and lacking Eleanor to guide their hatred of Bella, turn to the Harpy, entreating her to accept their misguided ways and become the new Toreador Primogen, to which she accepts reluctantly. Rebecca Godfrey becomes the de facto chief Harpy. Bella retains a great deal of social sway. Helen remains a Harpy throughout this, and the now lone La Sombra Ellen is brought in and ingratiated among the Harpies, eventually being widely recognized as the third. The position of Keeper of Elysium does seem to be in flux for some time after this.
Michael would campaign for this position. There needs to be a more martial mindset involved in defending Elysium, apparently.
All right. Since you bring that up, roll your... Oh, you don't have politics.
Nope.
So you are going to fail that roll, and you lack etiquette, so you will fail that roll. Rolls aside, actually, I should point out that Bella Matea, once snubbed in Elysium with a most awkward display involving kissing her hand by Michael McGavin, she demands that Rebecca not allow Michael take her seat. She fights you on this. She insists the Keeper of Elysium should hold greater etiquette and decorum, which you lack all of. It's an extremely uphill battle, and continuing
Totally fair.
So here's what I'm not gonna shut you out. Here's what I'm gonna give you. You know that it's gonna be extremely unpopular to campaign for this, though not impossible. You could risk making enemies if you press the point. So I would give you a very difficult role with a lot on the line socially, or you could back down and not risk any social disgrace.
Given that, once he's aware of the pushback, instead, he'd submit Helen for the position instead.
What's Michael thinking? What's his idea there?
Well, Helen is connected to Tristan and has access to a great deal of information by way of her fellow Nosferatu. So future threat could be circumvented before it actually came to fruition. More than that, while his hero status might not last long, knowing that the Gangrel are in support of increasing the station of the low clans, specifically the Nosferatu, might win him some favors later down the line, or at least send some whispers his way.
Go ahead and roll your... Go with... all the social rolls I'd go for. You don't have a whole lot going for you, but we'll go for a pure charisma, standard difficulty. Oh, you can add your dot of status to that. That's definitely applicable. Two successes. Helen accepts your nomination and seems pleased by your support. She pushes for that and actually has a lot of support by the other harpies, and so she ends up. It's not very difficult for her to get this position, and Helen does become Keeper of Elysium with your support. The hero of London supporting her instead of fighting for his own position. It looked at a lot better. And you can add a dot of ally to represent your relationship with Helen after that.
Can I similarly add a dot of ally for Tatiana?
Yes. Was there anything else you wanted to dig into that?
I've been pondering the position of Scourge, but it just seems out of character for Michael.
Michael would know also that Ambrose has not been looking to replace that. He hasn't spoken on it. It doesn't seem like he believes there's a need for it right now.
And it would be grossly out of character for Michael. So he wouldn't even broach the subject. Out of curiosity, where's Vane been in all of this?
Vane showed up about a week after the attack. Seeing that you more or less handled things without his aid, he gave you a nod of respect, which is more than most get. He was very casual about the encounter. He did not stay long, but you think that, at least on some level, certainly not an ally, but you think you've at least gained some sway, similar to your lawman's friend with the sheriff. You think you've made something of, maybe someone who would answer your call for aid somewhere else, maybe somewhere farther away, or for something of a different purpose.
Then in that case, he won't give Vane too large of a ration of shit for not showing up.
Probably a good idea. As for the Brujah-Nosferatu relations, from outside observance, those seem to become more polite and congenial than past nights, in those rare instances that the Nosferatu are seen interacting with anyone, though nothing too spectacular. And Simon, for your short time remaining in London, you'd be aware, more aware than most, of the more discreet meetings by the elders of each clan that belie a greater trust developing quietly and slowly. Without Quentin Chamberlain's influence, it's a sluggish and oftentimes stilted process, though it does seem to progress in his absence. On that note, about how long was Simon planning on staying to teach his new child? And who was he picking for his new child on that matter?
He's actually going to choose Marcus.
Marcus of Bathgate?
Yes, there are some reasons for this. First of all, Marcus is strong-willed. He thinks that he'll handle the embrace well. Secondly, he's educated, so he can help Simon with his own shortcomings there. And thirdly, he just likes his eccentricity. Thinks he's a good fit for the Nosferatu lifestyle.
Alright, it's a good thing you introduced Marcus to the powers of Vitae ahead of time. That certainly helps the transition and helps his appreciation for what happens to him when he undergoes the change, and as well as the time after Embrace, where his body deteriorates and becomes distended and horribly disfigured, much like the rest of you. He adapts better than many with your support and your scaffolding, and he does seem genuinely pleased for what you've offered him, especially one so close to the end of his life. It's a miracle, perhaps, he lived this long, and the embrace and the physical changes make him look even more hoary and old. And you can tell that he is grateful for the opportunity you've given him for many lifetimes more work of learning and gaining knowledge. And you said, how long were you sticking around in London to teach Marcus?
Probably a year or two.
Okay, that sounds about right.
I know he makes it seem like he's trying to get out of there right away, but we're talking vampire time right now.
Right.
A year or two is nothing.
Exactly. That's good. That's, go ahead.
For Michael's part, he'd at least try to influence Simon to stick around. You know, he might have burned some bridges, but those bridges seem to have been mended, for the most part. You've got a reputation, but we've all got a reputation. Don't think it won't follow you to York. Better the devils you know.
Simon might allow himself to be swayed over the year or two that he stays. To stay longer. But every time that Michael bothers about it, he just gives him a knowing smile.
As far as enemies go, the two of you would know that neither of you are popular among the Ventru or the Toreador right now. They both blame you for the investigation you succeeded at. Even the Ventru, who were previously supporting what ended up being an imposter, they still hate both of you for what you've done to their status. And it's not exactly a clan enmity, but certainly in London, those two clans hate both of you.
With a few notable exceptions.
Yes. Bella Matea, Rebecca Godfrey, they don't seem to hold quite the ire. I mean, Bella Matea hates you, Michael, but...
I mean, she doesn't hate me, she just doesn't like me.
Well...
Hate's maybe a bit strong.
Yeah.
Maybe.
They are passionate.
Yeah, true. Then there is Genevieve, probably has at least a lingering respect.
Genevieve is the only Venture who does not hate and actually likes both of you, and at times you suspect it's only because of her reigns that the Venture don't do more to cripple both of your attempts at success. Not the answers I needed. Okay. Also, within a few months' time of the attack, a visitor arrives with a contingent of retainers from the south by the name of Lady Allegheny, claiming kinship to Bruja Whipquin Chamberlain. She does not take the news of his death well, and spends the next several months on a campaign of public slander toward witch hunters and those who betray the faith, manipulate the faith for their own gains under the guise of religion. And at first this is met with great rebuke. But her words, night after night, shouted atop crates and inn tables with uncanny ardor and certainty, turn the public against the cleanse and anyone asking about witches, convincing the city that it's had enough trouble without people looking for more. Ultimately, these efforts have the dual effect of crushing the cleanse with dwindling numbers and infighting, and according to Nosferatu reports, it sends the remaining Shadow Inquisition out of the city for fear of further investigation or attention. And lastly, and most significantly, perhaps, within a year's time, by the end of 1346, the promise made by the impostor Cainite comes true. A virulence reeks across Europe at astounding speed and becomes known as the Black Death for the black marks it leaves on its kind victims, a plague already too familiar in London. It strikes the second wind on the city. It cuts the population in half. And though it makes hunting a nigh impossible task for some time, it does lack the lethality to Cainites, which the imposter's plague was certain to bring. Now that I've unloaded all of that onto you, what all are the rest of your immediate plans in the future? Starting, go ahead.
Did we not get a chance to let Leviticus know about the plans for Europe?
When you attempt to contact Leviticus, even after finding the decrepit and desiccated hand and lighting it, you never get a response. He does not show up.
Ass.
What all are Michael's plans going forward? The mostly immediate future.
Immediate future? Brush up on his business acumen, apparently.
It's true, you do have quite a few businesses that you now own by proxy.
He would be focusing on developing his seneschal skill or knowledges, maybe cultivating more of a presence in Elysium, even if certain harpies don't really care for him.
Yeah, neither of those things are your forte, but certainly something to work on over time. And of course, an ageless creature has all the time in the world to improve. So you have that going for you, at least.
He'd probably also work with Taziana on finding a place in more than just the street fights and brawls. Help her to kind of cultivate the same social skills.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even try to indoctrinate her in... Well, no, actually, she has that spear, so we won't be doing that. I was pondering indoctrination into the path of the Grey Hunter, but given that she was gifted that spear, and I rather like her to be able to continue using that. He's not going to do that. But he will teach her what he knows about their in-plane disciplines.
She's fairly reluctant to learn your hoity-toity ways of socializing in Elysium, but you do find that she also holds much to her humanity as well, and she does grow very attached to you, affectionate even, very close to her humanity, very much wild and alive. She reminds you of the kind sometimes in that way. And while it does make her brash and abrasive, she does seem very real. How would you describe that relationship developing over time? Mostly as utilitarian, or?
Well, definitely more than utilitarian. He actually does have some fondness for her. I'd probably classify it more as the only word coming to mind is consorts of a type, you know? Definitely more than just clanmates, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay. That makes sense. Would he try to pursue any relationship with her beyond that, anything intimate? Or keep it platonic?
Well, obviously that's going to depend more on her. He's not obviously not going to try and pressure her too hard in that direction, because he doesn't want to alienate her. But if he reads her correctly and she seems open, because she's been she's been keeping him at arm's length a lot up to this point. But you mentioned that she grew more affectionate. He might do that. Yeah. Probably.
Yeah, you notice she's actually very receptive to you, and it doesn't require much convincing on her part. She does keep you at arm's length for a while, but you find that she's also a bit of a tease.
Well, that I knew.
Yeah, right. So she doesn't need much convincing, and so she seems readily comfortable with becoming intimate with Michael.
Such as two dead people can, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
He might even introduce her. Yeah, he'd probably introduce her to. Fuck, I forgot my other person's name.
Caitlin Glover?
That's the one. Show her off at parties and whatnot.
She hates Caitlin Glover. She thinks she's some bimbo putana. Seems very jealous.
And I would imagine Caitlin also seems very jealous, which is kind of how Michael likes her.
Yeah, those two don't get along at all.
Well, in that case, it would be very few and far between unless it's a really good party.
Yeah. And, of course, intimacy between Cainites is different than with people, obviously. But it does have a few perks. Taziana is much sturdier than Caitlin, and of course she never gets tired, which works out well since she does like it a bit rougher. And of course, it's not as gratifying as the kiss or feeding, but you do find pleasure and enjoyment out of your intimacy with Taziana. That does serve to bond the two of you together in a unique way. So that seems to work out favorably for you.
It's like wrestling, only naked.
Exactly. Elsewhere, a couple years go by, and we catch up with Simon, on the night he's planning to leave for York. Describe Simon for us as he's, what is he bringing? What is he packing? Does he send Marcus ahead of him or leave him behind for a few nights? What all are his ideas there?
Simon would have planned this well ahead of time, arranging transportation, knowing that the roads, even during these changing times, are quite dangerous for Canaanites. So he would have made sure they had the proper carriages and road stops along the way. When he does leave, he brings very little else besides Marcus himself and whatever Marcus wants to bring, and then the clothes on his back. He's not much one for possessions.
All right. So on your way out, you're moving with Marcus through the streets, heading towards one of these carriages that's going to take you out. And surprisingly, or perhaps unsurprisingly, Simone Deschamps finds you in the streets somewhere on your way before you've made it to your carriage. Stopping you, she approaches you, casually wearing this fashionable dark green dress and a overbust corset. Her hair is done up and fit into a nice bonnet. She looks more regal and put together tonight than most nights. But once she reaches you, and of course Marcus not too far behind, once she reaches you, she stands looking down with far-reaching eyes. She remains quiet.
Simon looks at her for a little while, wondering if she's going to speak. Does she, or will he need to interject?
She's silent for about 10 to 15 seconds. It's an awkward exchange, certainly. And her eyes narrow suspiciously at you before she does speak up. I wonder what might have happened too. But he made two mistakes, He waited too long. And then he didn't drink. And I told him not to wait too long. I told him to... And her words drift off. Suddenly she looks caught by something, sadness or regret, in the midst of this rambling.
Does he know who she's referring to?
Good question. Not from a past conversation, but make an intelligence enigmas roll difficulty 8. Maybe you can decipher her.
Difficulty 8, you said?
That's right. No, nothing comes to mind. It's the words of a mad woman. It's unclear, whatever she's rambling about. But this sadness, the regret on her face, it passes quickly and her expression returns to mild irritation mixed with distant apathy. I always found our conversations delightful. I'll miss his company. It seemed every one of Simon's Reliquos met a dark fate in the end. Folding her arms together.
Simon's not a smart man, and he's even less capable when it comes to deciphering the emotions of women. So he says perhaps the wrong thing in a situation like this. You could come with us,
She smiles at that. That's something of a rare sight for Simone. Perhaps later. Not now.
He shrugs.
I'll keep the hearth warm for you.
Do you blame yourself? She kind of blurts out.
For which part?
The important part.
Simon thinks about that for a good 30 seconds before responding.
Maybe once for a little while. But I have other regrets that pass the time. I can forgive myself for what happened here.
She watches you, not with any immediate acknowledgement, but nods eventually. The fault lies not with you in any case, coward though you are. He did choose his fate.
I think that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Though I'm surprised you're still here, on this island, and she's out there. And she points nonchalantly towards the eastern gate, still open in the distance, and it dawns on you where Simone has caught you in your walk. This part of town is familiar to you. The winding street that descended and curved out of view, the poor tenement building you once frequented.
His eyes open wide for a moment.
You mean she's...
She casually starts to walk past you, not responding immediately, but you do hear her call back as she's walking further away. You won't find anything out there, but then again, who does? Eventually she walks out of view.
Do take care of yourself.
What was that about? You hear Marcus walking up from some ways away, a few bags on his shoulder.
She just gave me some very good news in her own way. One of the rare few who I actually liked might still live. I will not seek her out, of course. Her fate is her own. But I think the world will be better with her in it.
Ah. As you say. Kind of shrugs. The two of you begin making your way back out the eastern gate. What all is going through Simon's mind as he leaves the city?
He's thinking of times past, but starting with the very first time he came back, having been dropped off by Sharptooth on his journeys further to the west. And his mind goes over all the things that have happened since he came to London, all the good and the bad. Friends he's made and lost. And friends he might see again some other time. Who knows what the future holds?
So we pan away, pan up into the distance as Simon and Marcus make their way out of the city into their carriage, into the night, in the direction of York. Simon reflects on all the good and all the tragedy he's left behind in the city. Michael, you are able to continue on for a number of years with Taziana, building your business, developing a few friends here and there in Elysium. You're slowly making your way.
Taking a few ghouls.
Taking a few ghouls. Things seem to be somewhat undisturbed. Life or on life with Taziana is surprisingly content. A decade goes by quite quickly. Roll your perception empathy difficulty 8. One success. You notice at the end of this decade of relative peace, something in Taziana stirs, and you see in her eyes a fear. It reminds you of that night 10 years ago. You haven't seen that look in her eyes since then.
What troubles you, girl? You're like a frightened house cat?
It is, nothing, Figo. Just, old memories, huh?
Well, speak its name and let its power be diminished.
Make a charisma empathy roll, difficulty 6. Four successes. Taziana turns to you, and you see her let down her guard. And you see the fear return in her eyes again, the worry. And she eventually, reluctantly relents to you that she's been contacted. She's been met by someone. She doesn't know who, though she suspects why. Some man has reached out to her, Eastern sounding with broken French, trying to get her to lure you out to an ambush, to an assassination. And she, with tears forming in her eyes, she admits to contemplating it and telling this would-be assassin that she would agree to it for fear of her own on life.
Did they threaten you?
He gave me a choice. Either I lead you out and live, or I die with you.
Does the description he gave, or she gave, fit anyone he's aware of in the city?
Not a single person. The description she gives is not like anyone you've ever met before, though you're old enough now to have heard. Well, let's see if Michael has heard about this. Make an intelligence. You don't really have the things that I was looking for, but I'll give you an intelligence. Enigma's difficulty 7. Number of successes will determine how well you know this.
No, I was mostly gonna add, and then following this, I was gonna ask if it fits the description of anyone's sire you might be aware of.
Mm-hmm. Not immediately, but you can still make the roll to see if something comes up. Alright, 0 successes. No, she describes someone in a cloak with a weird hat and a strange voice. They don't speak perfect French. Nothing really comes to mind, though. The description it's certainly odd. Someone not local. And she also notes that this man demanded the fangs back.
Aye. So he's come to collect, it seems. Took him bloody long enough.
She looks to you holding her hands together. She looks very worried. As much perhaps worried about this assassin as what you'll do for her betrayal.
I've never been under any impression you weren't of a mind to save your own skin. Matter of fact, well, if I'm honest, I can't say I'm terribly surprised. Though, I wish that I were.
She looks sad and dejected and sits down away from you.
Time heals all. I'll get over it. For now, though, where was it I was supposed to meet this fella?
It was a alleyway between here and the Crow.
Right then. What time of evening?
He said to bring you in about a week, around midnight.
Very well. I won't be going, and you won't be going. But he'll get his fangs. And Michael will send a servant. Probably a ghoul. Maybe he'll have a fighting chance. With a tiny pouch containing the actually, he's a bit more of a dick than that. He's gonna go ahead and use a mortar and pestle to grind the fangs into dust and pour them into a leather pouch and then send them with the ghoul.
You can absolutely do that. You send your ghoul in about a week's time with this pouch with the ground up ash, really the ash dust of the remains of the fangs of this ancient imposter you slew. And he goes on his way.
With instructions to bring back whatever message this man has, assuming that the servant lives.
The servant does return, unharmed, in fact. He reports that the man, speaking in broken French, he accepts the package saying only thank you, And then he looked inside it, closed it, put it away, and then departed into the night and left your ghoul retainer to return to you unharmed.
With no other message.
None, sire. He did
I
not
know
seem...
you're sire. You fucking call me Michael as you always have.
None, Michael. He did not seem a want for words.
Now I'd be fucking stupid to think he'd leave it at that.
The man, your ghoul retainer, looks confused and mildly, unsettled.
Right then, Tazzy. Have you seen Ireland?
No.
Would you like to?
It sounds better and better.
Hey, you'll enjoy the moors. It's quite welcoming. The rain's quite, oh, it's not too terrible. Mostly falls, mostly vertical, slightly at a diagonal angle, but good Highland weather.
I could get used to that, I suppose. I didn't need a manse anyway. It's too big. And she smiles, disappears quickly.
I don't know that we won't be back. I've come and gone enough times in the past. They'll miss me here and there. Hopefully, the prince doesn't see fit to take back my businesses. They've been quite lucrative.
Right, whatever you say.
Now, bring up the spirits. Neither one of us is dead. And at least for the moment, it seems he's got what he's wanted.
Yes, just... He gave me this creepy feeling, you know? I did not like him, this man.
Hey, you weren't meant to. I expect it's that creature's either sire or something far more dire, perhaps a broodmate. I don't know which is more unnerving.
It's the waiting, I think. Not knowing he's just out there. The fucking Pagliacci won't just come in here and fight.
Aye, we could do that. But do remember what happened the last time we come again with something of that age.
But this time I'm ready.
I never doubted you for a second. I'd just rather not see my own chest split open again.
At that, she takes a few steps over towards you and brings her hand up to your chest. What about just the shirt, huh?
Have you ever made love on a ship crossing from Britain to Ireland?
The only ship I was on was very bumpy and very dark. I didn't like it. Cramped.
I expect we can find passage on a far more comfortable vessel. If you were talking, I totally missed it because my wife and child came in shouting at each other.
No, I just assumed you needed a second. What
Yeah.
all were you saying?
I expect we can probably find passage in a far more comfortable vessel.
Comfort-
Indeed, the North Sea tends to be quite calm this time of the year.
I could do with some calm. At least for a little while. And she starts undoing your shirt.
I expect we only have this evening before we'll need to make our move. We'll at least make it a memorable evening. The last one in this house.
She nods, smiling again.
Michael kind of forgets that the servant's there.
The servant's long gone at this point. He's kind of
Alright.
made his way off. And she proceeds to undress, and the two of you
Throw down.
throw down as the screen pans away. We move on to the following evening as this one finishes. So the scene opens again, and we see as the evening is settling in, and we see the master bedroom chamber of this manor, of this large manse, elegantly decorated in this large 4 wooden post frame bed, a king-size bed, mostly with messed up covers that are discarded and half pulled off. And we see Taziana face down, entirely nude, though the covers cover her lower half. And she's still quite torpid, but you're rising this evening, Michael. And what do we see what do we see with Michael when he's rising for the night? I assume on the night you plan to leave.
Yep. He's gotten used to her, we'll say, clock, as it were. So he doesn't bother to wake her by force, and will go about dressing and packing what he can.
Alright, your ghouls are quick to aid you. They seem to recognize that you mean to leave tonight, and they're working quickly to help you move stuff here and there, preparing a carriage. And while you're moving some of this stuff, you're downstairs on near the foyer, moving some of these crates of belongings, these chests of clothes. And you hear something. You hear what sounds like glass shattering and the slamming of a door, the turning over of furniture. It's some kind of problem going on upstairs.
So he wouldn't have gone very far from her. Certainly wouldn't be troubled with moving furniture or chests or anything like that. He'd have, I mean, he's still a gangrel. He'd have probably packed the equivalent of a backpack for the crossing. Anything else can follow after. He might have gone a full room away, maybe.
It doesn't seem to take long, whatever this is. It happens quickly, and you realize the door to your master bedroom is shut when you return.
Well, he's clearly going to have to break it down.
You give me a pure strength roll, difficulty 5. It's not like reinforced doors or anything. 1 success. All right, it's not fully destroyed or anything, but you break it enough to take it off the hinges a little bit, and you're able to squeeze in through this door, which you realize has quickly been locked. And when you step in, you see Taziana being propped up, and she's awake now. She's very awake. You can see she's still very nude, her breasts hanging out as she is on the bed and sitting kind of in this kneeling position. So she's sitting up facing you, and there's a man behind her kind of holding her by the hair, more or less. And you're in just in time to see this as a scimitar disconnects Taziana's head from the side, and you see her naked body fall to the bed, and her head falls and rolls towards you. And you see before you the assassin. You see this man. He seems to have this long, dark, Eastern-looking cloak and shroud, but more distinctly, he's wearing a dark tagia. That's a round, close-fit skull cap that covers the hair. There's cloth around his face, and this large scimitar that he holds. It seems wet with something besides blood. There are more dirks strapped to his belt. And he calls to you as soon as the head rolls forward. Hero of London. No thanks. Messy. Painful. Roll initiative. This Eastern-looking assassin is going to have the first attack. But how is Michael reacting to this, and what's he doing? What's going on with Michael?
Michael's going to pop claws, first off.
And how is he reacting to witnessing the death of Taziana in front of him?
Oh, he's screaming and about to enter frenzy.
I would say with instinct, you're not going to hold that back. You're going to ride the frenzy.
Like I said, he's about to enter frenzy. Well,
Okay.
I figured I'd roll for that at the beginning of my turn.
Mm-hmm. So I assume claws out, just going for a straight attack.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. One moment. spending blood. So this assassin is going to be doing a couple things. He's actually going to be waiting for you to make this attack before acting. So go ahead and roll your attack. And roll your frenzy to see if you can ride it and control it.
Well, what difficulty would you give?
Put it at 5.
He really wants to control this frenzy, so I'm going to go ahead and spend willpower on it too.
Okay. And for all intents and purposes, you're at full blood and full willpower. Starting at this. Alright, you've got control of the frenzy. As you let the beast out, you feel it surge. You have control. Roll your attack.
I also spent a blood for Dex. I forgot to hit the button.
Okay, ready? Alright, he is going to be dodging this. So what happens is, as Taziana's head is rolling past you, you don't even wait as the beast comes out, and you're leaping forward, claws extended, and he very calmly steps out of the way, drawing his scimitar up at the same time, and he's going to be making an attack. So he's got 1 success on this attack. He's putting 2 potents into damage. So that's 4, and the 2 potents makes 6 lethal. Go ahead and roll your stamina fortitude.
So I'm gonna go ahead and spend a blood to auto soak 3 of that.
Okay. Still got your stamina. Oh, you'll soak all of this, luckily. So he turns and he cuts at you, and you do feel something. There's one thing I failed to roll for something he did. I don't know how well this worked.
If it's what I think it is, he would have to be damaged for it to matter.
That was supposed to be difficulty 7, so that's actually 5 successes. So he does not actually cut you, but when you feel the blade pierce your clothes, as it does go through the clothes and it does go across your body, you feel something come off of it. Something begins to enervate you greatly. See your character sheet. Alright, because you have Fortitude 3, you auto-soaked, only 3 of this is going to actually impact your stamina. But your stamina is decreased by 3. So this blade cuts through you, and it cuts through the wounds even as they're closing, but something has gotten into you, some kind of poison or toxin.
What?
It would have been a lot worse if it was not for your fortitude, but your stamina is now at 1. What does Michael do when he feels this cut through him? Something is different about this blade. Something is different about this man.
I mean, apparently he dies.
You lost 3 stamina. You didn't take 6 You didn't take any amount of destructive damage yet.
I mean, he didn't take any damage, so I'm trying to figure out how he got any quietest blood into him.
The wound's healed, but you were infected by the toxin. Let me double check that. I'm pretty sure it has to be only skin contact for the one I'm thinking of. We'll double check that. Although I will note that the broken window is still broken.
Okay, it's only if it's on contact. Okay.
Yeah.
These things that change between editions.
But I will say that with your fortitude, you soaked 3 of the 6 on the poison successes he got, so you're down to 1 willpower. You feel like another attack like that might...
Willpower or stamina?
His roll on willpower changes how potent that poison is.
So did it take away my stamina or my willpower?
Your stamina. He rolled... sorry, that was confusing. He rolled stamina.
Yeah.
It's a stamina affecting poison. So you're at -3 stamina after this attack, despite your wounds actually closing up quite easily. What does Michael do?
Well, apparently he's going to run.
All right. Give me a Dex Athletics, standard difficulty. This window is wide open now that it's been broken. There's a clear path to it, and he's recovering from his attack.
Well, you said standard?
Yep. Alright, 4 successes. You do leap out of the mansion, leaving Taziana's corpse behind. And it's a significant drop, but you're skillful enough to land on your feet. The assassin seems to be hot on your trail, though. You hear the very quiet movement of wind behind you. You don't really hear a landing. You just kind of sense that something's behind you. Where does Michael go? Knowing that this assassin's right behind him.
Gonna head for the waterfront and jump the first cross-channel ferry for Ireland.
Okay. Let's see here. Look at your sheet. Are you trying to focus on losing this guy or just doing this quickly?
He's gonna try and lose him.
Okay, give me a wit stealth. Difficulty 6. Alright. 1 success. You can reroll at 10. It's gonna be contested. Okay, 1 success. But he fails, miraculously. You do lose him while you're running through the streets, pushing people aside and just trying to find a corner to turn. You know the city better than he does, clearly. And you do make it onto one of the ferries once you have a moment away, once you feel like you've lost him. And before anyone can really say anything, you're on this ferry, and you don't see the assassin immediately following. Just as it's taking off, you leave the city behind. Nightlights still glimmering. No sight of the assassin. What is going through Michael's mind at this point as he makes his escape?
Kind of a, well, once he can settle the beast.
Right.
Kind of a mixture of rage and grief. It's probably best for everyone involved that it's a short trip across the channel. Yeah, you know what I meant.
Mm-hmm. Because you were shooting for a boat to return to France, right? In that direction?
Ireland.
Oh, Ireland, okay. Yeah, well, relatively short. Indeed, no one really questions, one more face. No one seems to care enough to do anything about it once they see a face they don't recognize on this ferry. There's a number of people don't recognize. So you're left with your thoughts and the wound, as you do have to be concerned about who you show your back to, not just for your own safety, but because your clothes are torn open at the back, and you still feel the poison of this assassin. And you can't get that image out of your mind of Taziana's naked form and her pale head rolling towards you, long black hair. But for now, at least, you seem to have a moment of security. Though for how long, you're no longer sure. Right. Elsewhere.
Out of curiosity, how long does the stamina drain last?
I have it open in front of me. Let's see here. It does not... I don't know if it actually gives a duration, but I'm gonna say by the night's end, you're through it. Yeah, I'm gonna say it doesn't really last more than a scene. I'm not seeing a duration here, but certainly by the night's end, it's worn off, its effect. And elsewhere. We return to Tito Vega at the end of this number of years, closing in on a decade. You've had some time to learn the lay of the land. You find that this mine is located under a town, or very close to a town, called St. Albans. It's not very far north of London, you find. It's a small... Originally it was a quarry, this area you find, and now it seems much of the town and the Hertfordshire county around it has been corrupted and focused into this town, this temple for Malak. He or she or it seems to be bleeding the land dry of people. Many people die here from starvation, from abuse. For your part, you're mostly running the nightly duties of the temple. Malak never tells you more than you need to know to serve your purpose. But you deduce that this giant effigy of stone and silver has some great significance to her and is a long time from being done to her specifications. Much of what you regularly are in charge of is obedience and organization. These cultist slaves get tired, and then they get whipped back to work by taskmasters that are a higher caste than them. But sometimes the taskmasters go soft and give the slaves breaks. Those are the times you have to step in and make an example of them. How does Tito go about ensuring obedience, or how does he handle his role in Malak's temple?
For the taskmasters at Slack, how does he go about meting out his task as an overseer?
Yes. And kind of in general, does he go along, or does he subtly try to sabotage things, or does he do anything in particular to aid or set back Malak?
Uh, First, has Tito, has he seen Galfred?
No, not yet. You were named third apostle. You've not met the first two.
Okay. Well, let's see. What would Tito do? Did Malak give instructions on how to discipline him? Like, how much, freedom does he have?
There's a crude ranking structure with Malak at the top, and it seems like the apostles, whom you have to guess are Malak's thralls, are next. And then there's taskmasters and guards, enforcers, and then there's laborers, and then there's sacrifices and cattle. So you have a lot of freedom in this pyramid of power.
Alright, well, to get the message across that this won't be tolerated, he'll just, he'll strip that taskmaster of their rank and have, the ones he was overseeing actually take to him of stones, and the ones that get the killing blow will be the next, taskmaster.
Roll your manipulation leadership. Standard difficulty. Actually, difficulty 5. That's pretty creative, and Malak would approve. Four successes. You're very successful in your methods. Malak seems to nod approvingly at your decisions. The way in which you kind of manipulate and move people to higher status and subject others to degradation and even death very much pleases Malak, and you sense that that's very much in her desire. She seems to very much enjoy the sight of subjugation, of domination of the weak by the strong and the more worthy. That's kind of a theme with her, you learn. Although the pronoun is kind of fluid in the sense that the blonde woman you saw Malak take dies within a couple years. And by that I mostly mean the body is broken up, deteriorates in a similar way that you felt you were. It just kind of breaks down over time, and Malak has to change and take on new avatars as these bodies die in horrible, grisly deaths. And so she has new avatars from here and there, and sometimes it's a male, sometimes it's a female. Doesn't seem to matter much to this thing. Also in your duties are religious services, kind of like sermons, which involve organizing brutal and barbarous scenes of sexual depravity, invariably including the dehumanizing physical and mental submission of the lowest caste of acolytes to the higher caste. Both women and men are savagely raped and assaulted and humiliated during these events, the likes of which make your encounter with Camille look like the sweet embrace of gentle lovers. And at these sermons in particular, Malak watches in her full glory, taking in the sight And even after this time, it's not entirely clear to you whether this is something she merely does for some unknowable twisted amusement that only an alien creature like her might enjoy, or if some unholy transcendence is occurring, if something supernatural is involved. Perhaps some mixture of both. How does Tito cope with his role? How does he handle it mentally and emotionally? Walk us through that.
Assuming Tito gets any free time, he is deep in meditations with the abyss. That is his only solace in these times. And that's realm which he is his own master.
Look at your hierarchy of sins really quick. Okay. You're given precious little free time, and I would use that word or phrase very loosely. Really a better description of what you're given is time to decide how to accomplish tasks for Moloch, and the more successful you are, the more free time you have. And your initial success at getting with the program and subjecting these individuals to pain and torment at the hands of their more deserving superiors, and you, more significantly, choosing who those superiors are, definitely gives you some leeway with Moloch. And so you have time when you've accomplished your duties for these things. Moloch seems not to care or take notice that you're efficient and that you get these things done. As long as you get done what she wants, she seems not to care or bother you excessively. And some time passes as this decade finishes and you transition into your new function, your new overlord. When finally you're told the first apostle is returning to the temple, and you're to meet there for a ceremonious occasion. All the acolytes are ceased from their work for the event and align in a procession as though there were imaginary pews parting an imaginary nave, with you and Moloch at the end where this statue is at the end of the nave, at this chancel. And we see all of these poor, meek souls gathered in awe and fear as something approaches from higher up near the entrance, descending down through the air. Quiet murmurs go out watching this. The next thing we see is Tito and Moloch in the background, looking towards us. And to the side in the foreground, a dark wine red robe and a long pair of black boots slowly descend into view until they reach the ground, and you hear the voice call out to you. "It's been a long time, Keeper." And we cut away to black at that very moment. Not ever seeing the form. As we began this story, the camera fades in from black as we return to the red cresting mountains and lonely rocky plains of an ancient land in the Middle East. As a waning moon peers down on the nightscape, and the bloody villa where two young women hang eviscerated above a dying man. And from this view we again see the edges of our vision growing dark and blurred. From his perspective, things become unclear. We hear the gurgling sounds of blood being coughed up. A figure crouches beside, cloaked and veiled. Cloth wrapped around the face and revealing only two piercing snake green eyes amidst the many black satin layers. The figure turns the arm of this pale, bleeding man on the ground, runs his gloved thumb across the black brand marking him, his symbols.
Ah, one of Vardek's lambs, lost its way and caught by wolves.
The dying man lifts his head and continues to gurgle desperately, but the muffled voice emanates from the veiled stranger once more.
Shh, hush now, Lamb of Vardek. There is much poison in you. Words hasten your demise, and I will not allow that yet.
The glove is removed. An unnaturally long and alabaster white hand with long black fingernails exposed. The wrist cut by the stranger's blade. We watch as this dying man feeds from the stranger, the deep crimson wetting the man's face against the stranger's hand, spindly and pale as the moonlight. And after several moments, the stranger retracts from the man.
Now then, lamb, tell me your name.
The gasping man laying there leans back, looking again to his wife and daughter above him, past the stranger, and then returning to the icy gaze of his veiled savior. Korax. Korax of Marad. The stranger looks at him with stillness of a statue, repeating the name.
Korax of Marad. Well, Korax, this is not where your journey ends. You know what I am, what I can give you. You serve me, and in time I will give you all you need to hunt your wolves.
The still heaving man, wincing in pain and tears still in his eyes, looking to the end of his family above, looks back to the stranger and painfully nods his head. Deliver me my vengeance, and I swear my soul's oath to you, in death and beyond. But what may I call you, my master? The stranger looks at Korax, brings his long pale fingers into the dirt beside him, scooping up the dark red clay and letting it slip through the fingers.
My name changes with the soil beneath my feet, and though I always return home, I have trekked many lands. For now, master will suffice. I accept your oath, Korax of Marad. Lighten your heart with promise for the future, for the light of the sun shall never again warm you, and there are many busy nights ahead of us.
And looking from behind, we see the bottom of the veil pulled down, though the face is hidden, looking away from us as this stranger kneels down to the neck of Korax. And the camera looks away, lifting to the horizon, the great pale moon intermittently pierced by long flat clouds drifting through the night sky, as it looks down on the unsuspecting walled city visible in the distance. And slowly the screen fades to black on this sight. The end.